Have you ever had one of those moments where everything just goes wrong, but somehow, it ends up feeling like fate? It's a feeling that will make your heart race, your mind whirl with questions, and your curiosity spike until you can't turn away. This story isn't just about a wedding, it's about a woman who walked into a celebration and left with a whole new life, though she never planned for it. And trust me, by the time you finish watching this video, you'll be questioning everything about fate, love, and those unexpected moments that change your life forever. Picture this: you're invited to a wedding. It's supposed to be a simple, joyous occasion, a celebration of love, family, and lifelong commitments. But what if, for one person in this scenario, everything was about to go horribly wrong? A woman, innocent and unsuspecting, walks into the venue thinking she's there for the most basic of reasons, to celebrate the couple tying the knot. But that simple assumption is turned on its head when she's mistaken for the groom's date. She's thrown into a whirlwind of confusion, intrigue, and sheer chaos as everyone around her assumes she's involved with someone she's never even met before. The tension begins to build, and the mystery of the night only deepens from there. Now, stop and think for a moment. Have you ever been in a situation where you were mistaken for something or someone you were not? How did it feel? The awkwardness? The anxiety? It's an uncomfortable feeling, isn't it? But what if I told you that this one mistake leads to a series of events that nobody could have ever predicted? It's not just about misidentity, it's about a chance meeting that spirals into a night full of twists, secrets, and unexpected connections. And it's not just a romantic story. It's about relationships, misunderstandings, and the sheer unpredictability of life itself. The moment this woman is mistaken for the groom's date, she doesn't even know where to turn. She's thrown into the middle of a celebration, surrounded by strangers who expect her to be something she isn't. But things take a wild twist when she's introduced to the groom's brother. That's when things go from being just awkward to being completely mind-blowing. The chemistry? Instant. But it's not that simple, because as the evening unfolds, she begins to realize that she might just have been caught in a situation she didn't understand, and that the night is far from over. As the story unravels, so does her world, leaving her to wonder if fate is playing some kind of joke on her. What happens next will have you questioning everything: who is the right person, and where does true love really lie? I know you're probably on the edge of your seat right now, wondering, wait, who does she end up with? And trust me, that's just the beginning. You're going to want to stay till the very end of this story, because what happens next might be more than you bargained for. You'll find yourself rooting for the unexpected, questioning the twists of fate that led to this crazy night, and reflecting on your own experiences with love and destiny. Sometimes, the person we're meant to be with isn't the one we plan for or even think we know. Sometimes, it's the one we least expect, the one who comes into our lives when things go completely off course. So, right now, I want you to take a deep breath. Forget about the distractions. Focus on this video, because you're about to embark on a journey that will make you believe in the power of the unexpected. And I know it sounds crazy, but what happens in this story might even resonate with your own life in ways you didn't think possible. How often have we assumed something only to have it turn out completely differently? That moment of realization can change everything. The woman in this story will soon realize that her night is far from over, and the person she's walking out with might just be the person she never expected to meet. But here's where it gets even more intriguing. You've heard the saying, you never know who you're going to meet at a wedding, but it's not just about who she meets, it's about the choices she makes after the confusion starts. The brother's presence at the event, his intriguing personality, and the connection that sparks between them all point toward something that will make you question the nature of love and relationships. Is it possible that the person you're supposed to be with has been right under your nose all along? Or do we often get caught up in the wrong expectations, the wrong people, until fate steps in to give us the push we need? I know what you're thinking. Tell me more. What happens to this woman, and how does she get tangled up with the groom's brother? That's the mystery you're about to uncover. But I won't give it all away just yet. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. What happens next will keep you hooked, glued to your screen, and wondering just how much control we really have over our own destinies. This is a story about love, fate, and a twist that no one could have ever predicted. It's a reminder that life is full of surprises, and sometimes, The most unexpected moments are the ones that shape our future. So, if you've ever wondered what it's like to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe the right place at the right time, this story will hit home. Stick with me, because what unfolds next is not just another wedding story, it's the beginning of something life-changing. And now, as you start to dive deeper into this narrative, I want you to pay attention. The moments that seem small at first will turn into something much bigger. Every glance, every conversation, every twist will leave you questioning. Can you truly find love when you least expect it? Does fate really have a hand in everything we do, or is it just our choices that guide us to the right place at the right time? Trust me, you won't be able to look away from what's coming next. So stay with me. Keep watching. The answers you've been craving are just around the corner. The woman at the center of this unexpected twist, let's call her Emily, had no reason to expect anything unusual that day. She'd gotten the wedding invite just like everyone else, an elegant card with gold lettering and a RSVP request that felt more like a formality than an event that could alter her life. In the weeks leading up to the big day, she had been busy with her own life, juggling work, trying to keep up with her social circles, and maintaining some semblance of order in her chaotic, but predictable, routine. But something about this wedding felt different. Maybe it was the fact that she barely knew the bride, or maybe it was the unease she felt upon hearing the groom's name. His family had always been a bit of a mystery to her, a mix of wealth, influence, and unspoken tension that seemed to lurk just beneath the surface of their gatherings. Emily didn't know much about the groom's past or what kind of man he truly was. She had met him only once, during a brief encounter at a mutual friend's party, and yet, there was something unsettling about the interaction that stuck with her. His smile had seemed too perfect, his charm too rehearsed. But Emily, like most people, didn't pay it any mind. She just thought it was typical of someone from his background. As Emily entered the venue, the sense of discomfort she had been feeling started to creep in. The lavish decorations, the soft glow of the chandeliers, and the crowd of impeccably dressed guests made it feel like a fairy tale, except it was a fairy tale that she wasn't sure she was meant to be a part of. She wasn't particularly close to the bride either. Their friendship had been one of those casual connections that faded over time. But she'd agreed to come, mostly out of politeness. A few friendly faces would be there, and besides, it would be a good excuse to dress up and get out of the house for a while. Little did she know, that decision would bring her into a situation she could never have imagined. The moment she walked into the venue, things immediately felt off. The groom's family, in particular, seemed to be watching her a little too closely. It was subtle at first, a few sideways glances here and there, some hushed conversations. She dismissed it as nerves, maybe even the usual wedding day jitters. But as Emily took her seat at one of the long banquet tables, her heart skipped a beat when the groom's brother, Sam, approached her. The instant recognition in his eyes sent a chill down her spine. He had a look of confusion, mixed with curiosity. And before she could even process what was happening, he was introducing her to a group of people as if she was the groom's date. "Oh, you must be Emily, right?" he said, his voice smooth, like he had known her for years. "I'm Sam, the groom's brother. Great to finally meet you." Emily, caught off guard and confused, just nodded, unsure how to respond. The air around her felt heavier with each passing second. She had never once spoken to Sam before, never been introduced to him, and certainly never expected to be mistaken for someone's date, especially the groom's. Her mind raced as she tried to figure out where the mix-up had occurred. She hadn't even met the groom's brother before. She couldn't have possibly been confused for his date. Yet, here she was, being treated like someone who was supposed to be there. It didn't make sense. What was happening? And why was Sam, of all people, so convinced she was his brother's date? Sam's behavior was strange from the very beginning. There was a charm about him, an effortless charisma that made everyone around him feel at ease. But beneath the surface, there was something unsettling in the way he watched Emily, almost as though he was looking for something or someone. The more she tried to figure it out, the more disoriented she became. Her gut told her something wasn't right, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Was this some kind of joke? Or had there been a mistake? Either way, she was being drawn into something she wasn't prepared for. And then there was the groom himself, Derek. Derek was tall, handsome, and had that air of confidence that made him the center of attention in any room. He greeted Emily politely when they crossed paths, but there was an underlying tension in the way he did it. Almost like he was forcing a smile, his eyes flickering between her and the guests around them. Emily couldn't help but notice the way his jaw clenched for a split second when their eyes met. It was subtle, but it didn't escape her notice. Why did it feel like Derek wasn't as happy to see her as he should be? Was this another piece of the puzzle, or was she just imagining things? As the night wore on, Emily's confusion only deepened. Sam seemed to keep finding reasons to hover around her. At first, it was innocent, offering her a drink, making casual small talk. But as the evening progressed, she couldn't shake the feeling that his attention wasn't purely friendly. He kept touching her arm, leaning in a little too close, and even joking about how perfect the two of them looked together. It was all a little too much. Emily tried to brush it off, telling herself that maybe it was just the way Sam was charming, a little forward, but harmless. Yet something in the back of her mind whispered that there was more to this. Was he just being friendly, or was there an ulterior motive? She couldn't tell. And what about Derek? Why hadn't he been around much? There were glimpses of him throughout the night, of course, making his rounds, chatting with guests, but there was always something distant in his gaze. It was almost as if he was avoiding her. The more Emily tried to push the confusion out of her mind, the more the strange interactions piled up, until it felt like the night was slowly slipping out of her control. She wasn't sure if she was overthinking things, but everything felt off. Was it just a simple case of mistaken identity, or was there something bigger going on? There was a nagging feeling in the back of her mind that she couldn't shake, a sense that something had been set into motion the moment she walked into this wedding. But what was it? And how far did it go? The more she tried to piece it together, the more she realized that the answers she was seeking were elusive, slipping through her fingers like sand. By the time the night began winding down, Emily was no closer to understanding what had really happened. But what she didn't know was that her life, her entire world, was about to change in ways she could never have predicted. Sam, Derek's charming, mysterious brother, had no intentions of letting her walk away. And the truth? It was just beginning to unfold in front of her, one twist at a time. The evening's events had only just started to reveal their true nature, and Emily was unknowingly on the brink of discovering secrets that would alter everything. Secrets about the groom, secrets about Sam, and secrets about herself that she never could have imagined. And before this night was over, she would be faced with a choice that would change everything. What would she do next? Would she trust her instincts? Or would she follow the path that fate had seemingly laid out for her, no matter how confusing and strange it seemed? The only thing that was certain was that this wedding and the connections she made that night were anything but ordinary. The deeper Emily got into this tangled mess, the more she realized that she might never be able to walk away. Not from Sam, not from the groom, and certainly not from the tangled web of lies and truths that were starting to unravel around her. And the more she tried to understand, the more she was pulled into a mystery she had no intention of being part of. What was she supposed to do now? Was there even a way out? And why, out of all people, was it her who was caught in the middle of this dangerous game? As the night carried on, Emily couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. Despite all the glitz and glamour, there was an undercurrent of tension that seemed to follow her at every turn. She tried to push it aside, tried to focus on the cheerful music and the jovial conversations, but the sense of dread was impossible to ignore. Sam, Derek's brother, had been so persistent in his attention, always hovering just a little too close, making her feel like she was walking a fine line between polite engagement and something more sinister. But it wasn't just Sam's behavior that had her on edge, it was the mounting pressure of the night, the feeling that something was happening around her, and she was too far behind to catch up. Emily had tried to find clarity. When she excused herself from the crowd for a moment, she wandered into a quieter part of the venue, a small hallway that led to a balcony overlooking the garden. She needed space, time to think. She felt the cool air brush her skin as she stepped outside, the sounds of laughter and clinking glasses muffled behind her. Her mind raced through the events of the evening, trying to piece together the fragments of strange encounters. It was during this time, as she stood alone in the quiet, that she spotted something on the ground, a small, folded piece of paper. She picked it up, her fingers trembling slightly. It was a note, hastily written, the ink smudged in places as if it had been scribbled in a hurry. Her eyes scanned the text, and a chill ran down her spine. The note was brief but telling, "You're getting too close. Stop asking questions before it's too late." Emily's heart skipped a beat. Who had left this here? Was it meant for her? And why would someone warn her like this? The words felt like a silent threat, a warning to back off before things got out of hand. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach as she slipped the note into her pocket, knowing that whatever was happening around her was bigger than she had imagined. But even that small discovery wasn't enough to stop the swirl of confusion in her mind. If anything, it only deepened the mystery. Emily's thoughts turned back to Derek. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than he was letting on. There was something behind those cold smiles and distant glances. But what? She had no solid evidence to back up her suspicions, only fleeting moments of unease. And yet, it was those small details, the way Derek had seemed almost too eager to rush her off whenever she tried to get close, or how he always appeared just moments before things started to go wrong, that told her something wasn't adding up. The more she thought about it, the more it felt like Derek wasn't the man he appeared to be. But what was he hiding? Emily returned to the main hall, her mind still racing, but she couldn't shake the sense that she was being watched. She tried to blend back into the crowd, acting as though nothing had changed, but it was impossible to ignore the tension in the air. As she navigated through the throngs of guests, she bumped into someone unexpected, Megan, the bride's maid of honor. Megan was an old acquaintance, someone Emily had known casually from school, and though they weren't particularly close, Megan always struck her as someone who would be a good person to confide in. But as soon as Megan saw Emily, her smile seemed to falter. It was only for a split second, but Emily noticed it. It was like Megan knew something she wasn't telling. "Hey, Emily," Megan said, a little too cheerfully, but there was something in her tone that made Emily pause. "Everything okay? You're looking a bit distracted." Emily hesitated, considering whether she should ask her anything at all. Was Megan involved in this web of confusion somehow? She didn't want to appear paranoid, but the timing of Megan's appearance felt too coincidental. "I'm fine," Emily replied with a tight smile, but she couldn't stop herself from adding, "Do you know anything about the groom's family? About Derek?" Megan's eyes flickered nervously. I don't know what you mean," she said quickly, glancing around as if to make sure no one was listening. But there was a noticeable shift in her posture, her shoulders tensed, her lips pressing into a thin line. It was a tiny shift, almost imperceptible, but Emily caught it. Megan's response felt rehearsed, like she was trying to avoid something, like she was hiding a truth she wasn't ready to share. Before Emily could ask another question, Megan suddenly seemed to lose her composure, giving a quick, forced laugh. "You know, it's just wedding stuff. You're probably just tired. Anyway, don't let this night get to you. There's a lot of pressure on everyone, you know?" She gave Emily a too bright smile, her eyes darting toward the door as if she was eager to escape the conversation. It felt wrong, so wrong, but Emily couldn't quite put her finger on why. Megan's strange behavior was enough to leave Emily with even more questions. Was she hiding something? Was she somehow involved in whatever was going on with Derek and his family? Emily had a nagging feeling that the people around her weren't being entirely truthful. The warning note, Megan's strange reaction, Sam's persistent attention, it all seemed to point toward something much darker than a simple mix-up at a wedding. And then, things took another unexpected turn. As the night neared its end, Emily decided to take a moment to calm down. She wandered into a quieter area of the venue, passing by the coat check where guests were picking up their belongings. She glanced around, her mind still on the strange events unfolding around her, when she noticed something she hadn't seen before. On one of the coat racks, there was a large, black envelope tucked underneath a coat. Something about it stood out. It was sealed, with the word confidential written across the front in bold, red letters. Curiosity gnawed at her. She glanced around, making sure no one was watching her, and cautiously picked it up. But as she held the envelope in her hands, ready to open it and see what secrets it might hold, a voice called out from behind her. "Don't." It was Sam, his expression unreadable. He stood a few feet away, his eyes fixed on her with a kind of intensity that made Emily freeze. "I wouldn't open that if I were you," he said, his voice low, almost too calm. "Some things are better left untouched." Emily's heart skipped a beat. The envelope felt like the key to everything she had been trying to figure out, but Sam's warning sent a shiver down her spine. Was he trying to protect her, or was he trying to stop her from uncovering something he didn't want her to know? The tension between them hung thick in the air. Emily had no choice but to leave the envelope on the table, but the unease gnawed at her. She could feel the walls closing in on her, the pieces of the puzzle scattering, slipping further out of her reach. The truth was just out of grasp, but every step she took seemed to lead her deeper into a web of mystery and deceit. There was so much more to uncover, so many questions left unanswered, and yet the answers seemed to be slipping through her fingers faster than she could catch them. Who was Sam really? What was in the envelope? And what was Derek hiding? The deeper Emily dug, the more dangerous the path ahead seemed to become. She couldn't walk away now, but with every step, it felt like the truth was slipping further out of her reach. And soon, Emily would discover that the biggest twist of all was still waiting for her, and when it came, it would change everything. As Emily tried to shake off the unease that clung to her like a shadow, she couldn't deny that something was shifting. Every conversation, every glance felt like it carried weight now. She couldn't trust anyone, not even herself. The night had morphed into something far beyond a simple wedding. It was a tangled mess of half-truths, cryptic warnings, and lies that seemed to pull her further into a storm she hadn't expected. But the thing that really began to gnaw at her was that she wasn't the only one feeling the pressure. Someone else, someone connected to her, was starting to feel it too. Emily's best friend, Grace, had been trying to reach her all evening. Grace had been a part of Emily's life for years, a constant in a world that often felt chaotic. They were close, practically sisters, and Grace had always been the one Emily could turn to when she needed a grounding force. So when Emily's phone buzzed in her pocket, she expected it to be a simple check-in. Grace had been texting her all night, asking how things were going and if everything was okay, but this time, the message was different. The text that lit up her screen read, "I think someone's watching me. I'm scared, Em. I don't know what's going on, but I need you to come find me. Now." A cold chill spread through Emily's body as she read the message, and without hesitation, she excused herself from the crowd. She tried to push the panic back down, but the urgency in Grace's words sent her heart pounding in her chest. She barely knew where to start looking, but the first thing she did was text Grace back, "Where are you?" Grace's reply was quick, but her words only added to the confusion. "The parking lot. I think someone followed me out here. Please hurry." Emily's mind raced. Who could possibly be following Grace? She wasn't connected to the groom's family like Emily was. She wasn't even supposed to be part of this tangled mess. But there was no time to question it now. She pushed through the throngs of guests, her pulse quickening with each step. Something was happening, and she was no longer just a bystander. She was at the center of it, and it wasn't just about her anymore. Grace was in danger too. When Emily reached the parking lot, the first thing she noticed was how eerily quiet it was. The cars stood like silent sentinels, their headlights casting long shadows across the asphalt. The wedding noise was muffled now, just a distant hum. She scanned the area quickly, looking for Grace. But there was no sign of her. Panic tightened in her chest, and she called out softly, "Grace? Where are you?" No answer. Her hand instinctively reached for her phone again, but before she could dial Grace's number, a text came through. "I think they know we're onto them. Someone's been watching us all night. Be careful, Em. They won't stop until we drop the investigation." Her hands shook as she read the message, her thoughts spiraling even further. Who was they? What investigation? Grace had mentioned something vague earlier, but Emily hadn't thought much of it. Now, everything seemed connected. The warning note, Megan's suspicious behavior, Sam's cryptic words, and now Grace's panic. The walls were closing in, and the threads of the mystery were pulling tighter with each passing moment. But just as Emily was about to send another text, she saw movement out of the corner of her eye. There, just a few feet away, was Grace. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear, and she was backing away from someone or something that made Emily's blood run cold. The figure was cloaked in shadow, their features hidden by the darkness. Emily's breath hitched in her throat, but before she could say anything, Grace screamed, "Get out of here, Em. Run." Emily didn't have time to think. She bolted toward her friend, grabbing her by the arm and pulling her toward the nearest exit. But before they could make it to safety, a hand shot out from the shadows, grabbing Emily's wrist with a vice-like grip. She spun around to face the figure, heart racing, but what she saw made her freeze. It was Derek. The groom. His face, usually so calm and composed, was twisted in an expression Emily had never seen before. His eyes were cold, his lips tight with rage. And in that moment, Emily realized something crucial: he was more involved in this than she had ever suspected. The carefully crafted persona, the charming smile, the polite gestures, all of it had been a lie. This man wasn't just the groom. He wasn't just playing the role of the perfect fiancé. He was part of something much darker, something that Emily had only begun to uncover. "Let go of her, Derek," Grace hissed, her voice shaking but defiant. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Derek's grip tightened, and he moved closer, his face inches from Emily's. "You should have left things alone, Emily. You had your chance to walk away, but now you've gone too far. This isn't just a wedding. This isn't just about love. This is bigger than both of you." His voice was low, threatening. "You think you're safe, but you're already in too deep." Grace took a step forward, her face hardening. "If you think we're going to let you get away with this, you're wrong." Before Emily could respond, Derek glanced quickly over his shoulder, scanning the parking lot. His eyes narrowed, and then, with one last, cold look at the two women, he released Emily's wrist and backed away. "We'll see each other again soon," he said, his tone ominous, and then he turned and disappeared into the night. Emily stood frozen, her heart pounding. What had just happened? Was Derek really behind all this? Was he the one pulling the strings, or was he simply a part of something much bigger? And what did he mean when he said that they were already in too deep? Grace's shaking hand found Emily's. "We need to go. Now." But as they walked back toward the entrance, their minds whirling with confusion and fear, Emily felt her phone buzz again. A message from an unknown number. She opened it, her eyes scanning the words quickly. "You're not safe. No one is. Stop digging, or this won't just affect you." The weight of the message settled like a stone in her stomach. She had thought things couldn't get any more complicated, but with each passing second, it felt like they were only getting worse. Derek wasn't just a man with a dark secret, he was part of a much larger web, a dangerous world that Emily and Grace were now entangled in. And the more they tried to uncover the truth, the more the stakes grew higher. The questions kept piling up. Who else was involved in this? What did Derek mean when he said they were already too deep? And why had Grace been threatened too? They were running out of time, and it seemed like every move they made only pulled them further into a world they didn't understand. One thing was certain: the closer they got to the truth, the more dangerous it became. And with each new message, each new clue, the puzzle was only getting more complicated. Was there anyone left they could trust? Or were they truly alone in a game where the rules were written by someone with far too much power? The night air had grown colder, and the unease that had been gnawing at Emily since the moment she stepped into the wedding began to morph into something much darker. She and Grace had made it back inside the venue, trying to act like everything was fine, as if the events outside had been some terrible, inexplicable misunderstanding. But deep down, Emily could feel it, the weight of something far more sinister looming over them. Derek's warning echoed in her mind: "You're already in too deep." She couldn't ignore the way he looked at her before he disappeared into the shadows. It wasn't just the usual coldness. There was something more, something far more dangerous behind his eyes. Emily tried to push it all aside, tried to act normal, but every step she took felt like someone was watching her, every glance felt loaded with meaning. The air inside the venue had shifted too, thick with tension. The guests seemed to have faded into the background, their voices nothing but a muffled hum. Emily and Grace found themselves in the corner of the room, trying to gather their thoughts, but there was no escaping the feeling that the night was spiraling into something none of them could control. "Emily," Grace whispered, her voice tight, "this is too much. I can feel it." Someone's been following me. I swear, I saw the same black car outside when I went to the bathroom earlier. It's been circling the block all night. Emily felt her heart skip a beat. What? You didn't tell me that. I didn't want to scare you, Grace replied, her eyes darting around nervously. But I don't think we're safe here. I think they know we're on to them. The words hung in the air, heavier than the music and laughter that filled the room. Emily's mind raced. Who was they? Was it Derek? Was it someone else entirely? There were so many players in this game, so many people pulling strings, but Emily couldn't make sense of any of it. She tried to steady her breath, but a rising panic was clawing its way up her chest. We need to get out of here, she said, the words leaving her lips before she could even fully process them. Grace nodded in agreement, and the two of them made their way toward the exit, but just as they reached the door, Emily froze. Her hand was still on the door handle when she felt it, a shiver that ran down her spine, an instinctive sense that something was wrong. Someone was watching them. She turned around slowly, her eyes scanning the room, trying to pinpoint the source of the sudden surge of dread that filled her gut. The guests were laughing, chatting, blissfully unaware, but that feeling, the one that clawed at her heart, made the hairs on her neck stand on end, was undeniable. There, in the far corner of the room, standing in the shadows near the bar, was a figure. A man, his face partially obscured by the dim light, but there was something about him. His posture was stiff, unnaturally still, and as Emily's eyes locked onto him, she could feel his gaze on her. His eyes were sharp, cold, and calculating. There was no mistaking it, he was watching them. Watching her. Without a word, Grace noticed it too, her face paling as she grabbed Emily's arm and whispered, "He's been following us." Emily's mind went into overdrive. Who was he? Was he part of whatever game Derek was playing? Or was he connected to someone else in this mess? The stranger's eyes flicked away from her and toward the door, as if he knew they were onto him. A cold chill ran down Emily's spine, and she felt the urge to run, but something held her in place. She couldn't move. And then, just as quickly as he appeared, the figure disappeared into the crowd. Where did he go? Grace muttered under her breath, her grip tightening on Emily's arm. Emily's heart raced. She had to be sure. She had to know if they were truly being followed, if they were truly in danger. She glanced toward the door again, half expecting to see the man lurking there, but the exit was clear. The tension in the room had become suffocating, but as she and Grace stood in the middle of the crowd, Emily's phone buzzed again, its shrill sound cutting through the silence like a knife. She pulled it from her pocket, her hands trembling as she glanced at the screen. You're not safe. They know everything. Don't trust anyone. Emily's stomach dropped. The message was too direct, too ominous to ignore. But the worst part. It wasn't from an unknown number this time. The text came from someone she knew. It was from Megan. Her mind raced as she looked at Grace, trying to piece together what was happening. Megan was one of the only people she had trusted in this place, one of the only people she thought might be on her side. Yet, the text from her, *don't trust anyone*, felt like a betrayal. Was Megan involved in all of this? Was she somehow tied to the dark side of this story? Emily's mind reeled with confusion and growing paranoia. She had no answers. Only more questions. We need to get out of here, Emily said again, her voice shaking. She knew they couldn't stay. But as they turned toward the door, something happened that made her blood run cold. A familiar voice, Derek's, cut through the noise, and they both froze. Leaving so soon? He asked, his voice smooth, yet laced with something dark. He was standing at the edge of the room, his eyes gleaming with a kind of satisfaction, as if he knew exactly what they were thinking. I think you've been looking in all the wrong places. Emily felt her breath catch in her throat. He knew. Somehow, he knew what they were planning. She could feel the tension tightening around them like a noose. Every movement felt calculated, every word a trap. Derek wasn't just the groom. He wasn't just someone she'd met at a wedding. He was the one pulling the strings, and he was making it clear that there was no way out. Not for her. Not for Grace. What do you want from us, Derek? Grace demanded, stepping forward, her voice surprisingly steady despite the fear in her eyes. Derek smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Oh, Grace, it's not about what I want. It's about what you're willing to uncover. You think you're in control of this situation? You're not. None of you are. His gaze flicked to Emily. You've already crossed a line. And now, there's no going back. Emily's heart raced as she looked between Grace and Derek, panic rising like a tidal wave. What did he mean? What line had they crossed? And who was really in charge of all this? She could feel her world narrowing, closing in on her as the walls seemed to move closer with each word Derek spoke. But before either of them could respond, the lights in the room flickered. A loud crash echoed from the back, followed by shouting, and the sound of glass shattering. Everyone's attention shifted, but Emily knew it was no coincidence. It was another sign. Another warning. She was no longer just a bystander in someone else's game. She was the target now, and the stakes had been raised. As the lights flickered again, plunging the room into darkness for a brief moment, Emily's thoughts raced, her heart pounding so loudly in her chest that it almost drowned out everything else. The danger wasn't just around the corner. It was right there, in front of her, in every shadow, in every whisper. And no one was coming to save her. As the chaos erupted around them, she grabbed Grace's hand, pulling her toward the exit with every ounce of strength she had. But even as she ran, her mind couldn't escape the terrifying truth. They were trapped in a web they could never hope to untangle. The people they had trusted, the faces they thought they knew, were part of something much darker, and now, they had no choice but to survive the night. Whatever it took. But what Emily didn't know was that the night was only just beginning. The real danger was still to come. Just as Emily and Grace were about to reach the exit, the air in the room seemed to shift again, colder and heavier than before. The tension had been so thick, it felt like it was pressing against her chest, constricting her lungs with each desperate breath she took. She kept her eyes trained on the door ahead, but her mind kept flashing back to the cryptic warning from Megan, Derek's threatening words, and the mysterious figure lurking in the shadows. It felt like they were being pulled deeper into a nightmare, one with no clear ending in sight. As they neared the door, the noise in the venue faded away, replaced by a strange, almost eerie silence. And that's when Emily's phone buzzed again. The screen lit up with a new message, and her heart skipped a beat when she saw who it was from. It wasn't Megan this time. It wasn't an unknown number either. The message came from a name she hadn't seen in days, from someone she thought she could trust completely. You don't know the whole story, Emily. You need to stop running. It's not Derek you should be afraid of. It's someone much closer than you think. The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She read them over and over, her hands trembling as she tried to make sense of what was happening. Who was sending these messages, and why did it feel like the ground beneath her was shifting every time she thought she had a hold on it? She had already been questioning everything, but now it felt like her entire reality was starting to crumble. She turned to Grace, who had stopped walking and was staring at her, waiting for an explanation. Emily's eyes flicked between Grace's confused face and the screen of her phone. Grace, it's from Megan, Emily whispered, her voice barely above a breath. She's telling me to stop running, that it's not Derek we should be worried about. Grace's brows furrowed, a look of disbelief crossing her face. Megan? What are you talking about? Emily, Megan's been trying to help us. She's... Exactly, Emily cut her off, feeling the weight of the words sink in. She's been helping us. But now she's saying it's not Derek. It's someone closer. The realization hit like a sudden blow to the chest. Her thoughts raced, trying to piece together everything she'd been told, everything she thought she knew. Megan had been a key part of the puzzle, the one person Emily had trusted to give her information, to steer her in the right direction. But what if Megan wasn't who she seemed to be? What if, all along, Megan had been pulling the strings, steering Emily toward a truth that was completely wrong? As the minutes passed in stunned silence, Emily's mind spiraled into a whirlwind of confusion and dread. She glanced around the room again, searching for any sign of the mysterious man from the shadows, or anyone who could provide answers, but it was all starting to blur together. The wedding, the messages, the warnings, the strange behavior from Derek, it was all connected, but in a way that made no sense. Nothing was what it seemed. And the more she tried to unravel it, the tighter the knots became. Then, out of nowhere, Emily heard a voice behind her, and she whipped around, her heart thudding against her ribcage. The last person she ever expected to see was standing there. It was Sam. Sam, the brother of the groom. But this wasn't the calm, cool Sam she had first met. This Sam was different. His eyes were wild, frantic, and his hands shook as he approached them, taking slow, deliberate steps. "You're not safe," he said, his voice barely a whisper, as if the very words could get him in trouble. "You need to leave. Now." Emily's mind was a blur of thoughts and emotions. Why was Sam acting this way? Was he in on it too? Or was he genuinely trying to help them? She had always gotten a weird vibe from him, something that made her question whether he was a victim in all of this or another player in a far darker game. But this felt different. This felt like desperation. "What's going on?" Emily demanded, taking a step toward him, her voice low but full of urgency. "Tell me what's happening. We're being followed, we're getting threats, this is insane. Are you in this, Sam? Are you?" "I didn't want it to go this far," Sam interrupted, his voice cracking under the weight of his words. "I tried to stop it, but there's no stopping them. Not now. Derek, he's not who you think he is. And neither is Megan." Emily's chest tightened as she stared at him, trying to comprehend what he was saying. "What do you mean? What aren't you telling me, Sam?" Sam swallowed hard, his eyes darting nervously around the room as if he were afraid someone might overhear. "Megan, she's been playing you from the start. She's been working with Derek. The two of them, they've been manipulating you, Emily. They know everything about you, everything. It's not just the wedding. This goes deeper than you think." The words hit her like a slap to the face, and for a moment, Emily couldn't breathe. She had trusted Megan. She had confided in her, believed her when she said she was trying to help. But now, standing here in the middle of a web of lies and deceit, she couldn't shake the feeling that everything she knew was falling apart in real time. The wedding wasn't the beginning of the story. It was just the tip of the iceberg. Sam took a step closer, his voice barely a whisper now. "I tried to warn you. But it's too late. They've been playing this game for years. The thing you don't understand is that this wedding, this is just a cover for something much bigger." Before Emily could react, there was a loud bang from the back of the venue, followed by screams. Panic erupted in the room as people scrambled to find out what had happened. It felt like the entire world had tilted on its axis, and everything that had seemed so clear just moments ago was now shrouded in a thick, impenetrable fog. Sam grabbed her by the wrist, pulling her toward the exit. "You need to leave. Now. It's not safe here anymore." But just as they reached the door, Emily's phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't a cryptic message. It was a call. And the name on the screen made her blood run cold. It was Megan. She hesitated for a second, her heart racing in her chest, and then answered it, putting the phone to her ear. "Megan," she said, her voice trembling with fear and confusion. "Megan?" The voice on the other end wasn't Megan's. It was Derek's. And his voice was colder than anything Emily had ever heard. "You really thought you could escape? You don't know what you're up against, Emily. You think Sam's on your side? Think again." The call ended abruptly, and as the phone slipped from her trembling hand, everything she thought she knew about the wedding, about the people involved, about the dangers they were facing, everything was thrown into question. Nothing was what it seemed. And in that moment, Emily realized one terrifying truth. She had been playing their game all along, and the worst part was, she didn't even know the rules. The walls were closing in, and now, she had no choice but to find a way out. But there was one thing she was certain of: the game was far from over. In fact, it had only just begun. Emily's mind was a storm of conflicting thoughts and emotions as she stumbled out of the venue, her legs shaky beneath her. Sam's warning, Derek's chilling voice on the phone, and Megan's betrayal had all collided into a whirlwind that made it almost impossible to breathe. She was no longer just questioning the motives of those around her, she was paralyzed by the weight of the choices she now faced. Every direction felt like a trap. There was no way forward that didn't lead to pain or betrayal, and no matter how hard she tried to steady herself, it felt like the ground was constantly shifting beneath her feet. She wanted to scream, to break down, But she knew that doing so would only make her a target, just another pawn in the game she'd been forced into without warning. Sam didn't seem to notice her internal turmoil as he gripped her wrist with an almost desperate strength. His eyes were wide with fear, and for the first time since she'd met him, there was no hint of the cool, aloof brother of the groom she'd once known. The man in front of her wasn't just trying to protect her, he was trying to survive too. They were both caught in something so much darker than either of them had realized, and it was clear that Sam was struggling just as much to hold on to the thin thread of control they both desperately needed. "Emily," Sam said, his voice rough, but urgent. "You have to understand. It's not just about getting away from the wedding. It's about getting away from everything. From them. From Megan. From Derek. You think you can trust them? You're wrong. You have no idea who you're dealing with." Emily's mind screamed in protest. This wasn't the Sam she knew. The Sam she thought she knew. He was the kind of guy who'd smiled through every interaction, who seemed like a minor player in this entire situation. But now, his face was pinched with the kind of anxiety that only comes from years of living under constant pressure. The kind of pressure Emily had no idea even existed, until now. "What do you mean, Sam?" she said, her voice tight. "You've been in this the whole time, haven't you? You've known what was going on. You knew, and you said nothing." She could feel the heat rise in her chest, a mix of hurt and betrayal. Everything she had thought about him, everything she had built in her mind about the safety he represented, crumbled in a heartbeat. It was all a lie. "You've been playing me, too. Haven't you?" Sam flinched as if she'd slapped him. His hand let go of her wrist, but his eyes remained locked on hers, desperately searching for some sign that she still trusted him. "No. I swear, Emily, I never wanted any of this. I never wanted you involved in this, but you are. You've been part of this from the very beginning, whether you realized it or not. The moment you walked into that wedding, everything changed. Everything." His voice cracked, the weight of his words heavier than anything she'd heard before. She stepped back, her head swimming with everything he had just told her. She needed to escape, to get away from Sam, from the lies, from the mess that had swallowed her whole. But as she took a step away from him, something stopped her, something deep inside her refused to believe it was as simple as this. There was more. She knew there had to be. "You're telling me that I was part of this?" she asked, her voice trembling despite her attempts to remain strong. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her as she thought of all the moments she'd shared with Megan, with Derek, with Sam, even the ones that seemed so innocent, so full of promise. She'd been trusting them all. And now, that trust felt like an anchor pulling her under, deeper and deeper into a world she didn't understand, a world she didn't want to be part of anymore. "You want me to believe that I've been part of this game without even knowing it?" Sam's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, she saw the brother, the man who'd once been her ally, her friend, the one who had promised to keep her safe. "I didn't want it to be this way, Emily. I never meant for you to be caught in the middle of all this. But now it's too late. Megan is deeper in this than you know. She's been feeding me information, feeding me lies. She's working with Derek, Emily. She's been working with him for years. It's all part of the plan." The words hit her like a punch to the stomach. Megan. The woman she had trusted above all others. The one who had been there when things got tough, the one who had given her advice, shown her kindness. The one person who made Emily feel like she wasn't losing her mind. But all of that was a lie. Every conversation, every gesture, every little piece of advice had been a tool, a piece of a puzzle that was designed to lead her to this moment, this horrible moment where everything she thought she knew crumbled. But there was more. There had to be. Emily's mind wouldn't stop turning, the gears grinding against each other as she struggled to make sense of the web she was trapped in. "Why?" she asked, barely able to get the words out. "Why would Megan do this? Why would anyone want to hurt me? What's the point of all this?" Sam closed his eyes for a brief second before opening them, his gaze filled with something Emily couldn't quite place: regret, pain, guilt. "Because they need you, Emily. They need you to do something. You have something they want. You've always had it. But they can't get it from you unless you decide to give it to them." Emily's stomach dropped as the weight of his words sank in. She had always thought this was about the wedding, about the strange dynamics between Derek and his brother Sam, but it wasn't. She wasn't the pawn in a love triangle or some twisted family drama. No, she was something far more valuable, a key to a much darker plan. The realization stung, like a bitter taste in her mouth. Then what? What am I supposed to do? She demanded, trying to keep the desperation from cracking her voice. What choice do I have? If I leave, they'll come after me. If I stay, I'm still a part of their game. Either way, I lose. Sam shook his head. It's worse than that, Emily. They'll hurt you. They'll hurt everyone you care about if you don't play along. They've already shown you that. Derek, Megan, they know your every move, your every thought. They've been watching you. Her breath hitched. And what about you, Sam? She asked, suddenly realizing that she had never fully trusted him. Had it all been an act? Had his kindness just been another piece of the puzzle? Are you one of them too? Sam's face contorted in pain as he looked away, unable to answer her. In that moment, Emily realized just how deep the betrayal ran. Sam wasn't just caught in the web. He was part of it. He was the bait they had used to draw her in. Everything had been orchestrated. The decision now weighed heavily on Emily, more than ever before. She could run, she could try to escape from it all, but she knew that wouldn't guarantee safety. Or she could confront the terrifying truth head-on and hope that somehow, she could outsmart the ones pulling the strings. She had no guarantee of survival. No certainty that she would ever see the light of day again. But one thing was clear, the choices she had made, the alliances she had formed, the trust she had given, none of it mattered anymore. What mattered was that she now had to decide, in the cruelest possible way, whether to risk everything to expose the truth, or protect the only life she had left. As the night pressed in around her, Emily stood frozen, feeling the weight of the impossible choices suffocating her. The darkness seemed to close in, and all she could hear was the ticking of an invisible clock, counting down to an end she couldn't predict. The air felt thick with anticipation, the kind of oppressive heaviness that seemed to seep into every corner of the room, every crack in the walls. Emily stood in the dimly lit hallway of the mansion, her heart racing, her pulse pounding in her ears like a drumbeat. She could hear the faint sounds of voices coming from behind the door in front of her, whispers, murmurs, and then a sharp laugh that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand on end. She knew the moment had come. The culmination of everything she had uncovered, every twist and turn, every betrayal and lie, all led to this single point. Behind that door was the truth. She had come this far, despite the lies, the manipulation, the threats. She had uncovered the pieces of the puzzle, each revelation darker than the last, but now, standing just inches away from the final confrontation, she realized something terrifying. She still didn't know the whole picture. There were still gaps, pieces of the story that didn't make sense, that didn't fit together. And in that uncertainty, she could feel the weight of her decision bearing down on her with a crushing intensity. Sam had disappeared. He had left her with a cryptic warning, urging her to be careful, to trust no one. His disappearance had only deepened the mystery, making her wonder whether he had betrayed her, or if he, too, had fallen victim to the game being played around them. She wasn't sure who to trust anymore. Was Derek the mastermind behind it all, pulling the strings from the shadows, or had Megan been manipulating everyone, using them like pawns to get what she wanted? There were too many lies, too many questions, and no clear path to follow. But one thing was certain, it all led to this room. Her hand hovered over the doorknob, her breath shallow as she tried to steady herself. She couldn't go back now. She had no choice but to confront the truth, no matter how horrifying it might be. With one final, steadying breath, she turned the knob and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, the only source of light coming from a single lamp casting long shadows across the walls. And there, in the center of the room, stood the last person she had expected to see, Megan. Her heart stopped. It wasn't supposed to be her. Not now, not like this. Megan stood there, her arms crossed, a look of cold amusement on her face, as if she had been waiting for Emily all along. "You're finally here," Megan said, her voice smooth, like the calm before a storm. "I've been expecting you." Emily couldn't speak. Her throat felt dry, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts, 1,000 questions that all collided at once. Why? How? What did this mean? She had trusted Megan, believed she was a friend, a confidant. But now, seeing her standing there, calm and collected, everything about her seemed so wrong. "Megan," Emily's voice cracked, "what is this? What's going on? Why all the lies? Why the game?" Megan didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled, an unsettling, almost predatory grin that sent a shiver down Emily's spine. "Oh, Emily, sweet, naive Emily. It's not just about the wedding, is it? It was never just about that. It was about you, about what you hold. What you've always held." Emily's mind raced, but the words barely made sense. "What do you mean? What do I have? What are you talking about?" Megan stepped forward slowly, her gaze never leaving Emily's, her presence now more ominous than ever. "You have the key, Emily. The thing that can unlock everything. The thing we've been trying to get from you for so long." She paused, watching Emily's expression change from confusion to disbelief. "You think you've been running from Derek, from me, from Sam? You've been running from yourself, from your own destiny. From the truth about who you really are." Emily's head spun as she tried to make sense of the words, but nothing made sense anymore. She felt dizzy, like the floor beneath her feet was shifting, warping. "What are you talking about?" she whispered, barely able to process the enormity of what Megan was saying. "You're not who you think you are, Emily," Megan continued, her voice a low murmur now. "You're the heir. The last piece in a long line of power, a lineage that goes back generations. Derek and Sam, they're just pawns. I'm the one who's been orchestrating everything. You're the key to the power that can change everything." The words hit Emily like a freight train. She staggered back, her knees buckling as her mind struggled to catch up with the shock. Her destiny. Her lineage. What was she talking about? She couldn't breathe, couldn't think straight. This had all started with a simple wedding, with a chance encounter. Now, it was clear that she had been caught in a far darker, far more dangerous game than she could have ever imagined. "Why didn't you just tell me?" Emily managed to choke out, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why play these games? Why all this?" Megan's expression softened, just slightly. "Because I needed you to trust me. I needed you to come to this point on your own, to see it for yourself. If I had told you, you would have run. But now, you're ready. You understand. You see it, don't you?" Megan's eyes sparkled, a cold, calculating gleam that sent a chill through Emily. "It was never about Derek. Or Sam. It was always about you." And then, as if everything up until that point had been a mere prelude to the real game, the door slammed shut behind Emily, and the room was plunged into darkness. The last light flickered out, and Emily was left in total blackness, the only sound the frantic pounding of her heart in her chest. She couldn't see anything, couldn't move, couldn't escape. And then, from the shadows, a new voice broke the silence, a voice she would never have expected to hear. "You think this is the end?" It was Derek. His voice was smooth, too smooth, and it was like a cold knife sliding into her back. "I've been waiting for you to figure it out, Emily. But now, you're too late. The game's already over. You've already chosen." Emily's breath caught in her throat as the weight of his words sank in. She had thought she was one step ahead, that she had been the one pulling the strings, but it had all been an illusion. They had been playing her. They had been manipulating her every move from the start. Megan, Sam, Derek, they were all part of the same plan. And now, she was cornered, trapped in a game she didn't even understand, with no way out. But just as the darkness closed in, a flash of light illuminated the room, and for the first time, Emily saw it, the final piece of the puzzle. On the floor, half hidden in the shadows, was a symbol. A symbol she had seen before, but never fully understood. A symbol that connected everything, the wedding, the family, the strange messages, and the lies. It was the key to everything, the secret that had been right in front of her all along. And in that moment, Emily realized something that would change everything. She wasn't just the pawn in their game. She was the queen. But as the pieces of the puzzle clicked together, she also understood one final, horrifying truth. No one was walking away from this unscathed. The game was far from over. In fact, it was only just beginning. The night had swallowed Emily whole, and as the first light of dawn filtered through the cracks in the mansion's old, dust-covered windows, she found herself standing in the same room where it all began. The wedding had felt like a lifetime ago, a faraway dream she could hardly remember, a dream that had led her into a nightmare she could never escape. Meghan's twisted revelations, Derek's cold voice, and the final piece of the puzzle, the symbol that had connected everything, seemed like distant echoes now, fading in the background of her thoughts. She had come to terms with the truth, at least enough to understand that there was no going back, no undoing what had been done. The pieces of the game had been scattered, and it was up to her to decide how to move forward. As Emily stood there, the weight of the past few weeks pressed heavily on her shoulders, but for the first time in what felt like forever, she wasn't drowning in the uncertainty. The truth, as horrifying as it was, had finally been uncovered. She was the heir, the key to a power and a legacy she never asked for, a legacy that had pulled her into a web of deceit and manipulation. Meghan, Derek, Sam, they were all part of the plan, their motives tied to something far deeper than she could have ever imagined. But it wasn't just about control or revenge, it was about the truth of who she was and what she represented. As she stood there in the silence, her mind replayed the events that had led her here. The confrontation with Meghan, the chilling exchange with Derek, the growing paranoia that had gnawed at her every step of the way, it all made sense now. The symbol, the key, the choices she'd had to make, they weren't just random twists of fate. They were part of a bigger story, one she was only beginning to understand. And while she had thought, at one point, that exposing the truth would give her peace, she now realized that the peace she sought wasn't something that could be handed to her. It wasn't something anyone could give her. It was something she had to create for herself. But there was no denying the toll it had taken. Trust had been shattered, friendships had been destroyed, and her life would never be the same. Meghan, the woman she had trusted, the one who had been her closest ally in all of this, was gone. There was no more pretending. No more lies. Emily had seen the truth, and now, it was up to her to live with it. The weight of that truth was suffocating, but at least it was hers to carry. The choices were hers to make. She no longer had to run, no longer had to be afraid. The game was over for them, but not for her. She glanced at the small, old wooden box on the desk before her, the box that held the symbol. The key to everything. It wasn't a magical object, no ancient relic, but a simple, unassuming piece of a much larger puzzle. The power wasn't in the box. It was in the choices she made. Emily had the power now. She could take what was left of this tangled mess and shape it into something new, something of her own. But there was one thing she knew for certain: she would never let herself be a pawn again. As Emily stepped away from the desk, the weight of the past moments still lingered in her chest. It wasn't that she was free from everything, no, the damage had been done, and the scars would remain. But there was a sense of resolution in her now, a quiet understanding that, despite everything, she had survived. She had fought her way through a labyrinth of lies, betrayal, and manipulation, and she was still standing. The pieces of her life, shattered and scattered, had somehow started to come together, and while the future remained uncertain, it was her future now. She was no longer at the mercy of anyone else's plan. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway outside the room, and Emily turned, her heart skipping a beat. She wasn't alone. The door opened slowly, and in the doorway stood Sam, his face drawn with exhaustion but his eyes holding a glimmer of something she hadn't seen in a long time: hope. He had come back. He hadn't run, hadn't given up on her even after everything. The storm between them wasn't over, not by a long shot, but in that moment, they both understood something unspoken. They had both been broken, but they weren't lost. Not yet. I thought you were gone, Emily said softly, her voice betraying the vulnerability she had tried so hard to bury. I was, Sam replied, his voice rough but steady. But I'm here now. We're in this together. Emily nodded, the weight of his words settling over her like a comfort she hadn't realized she needed. The past was never going to be erased, and the scars would always be there, but she wasn't alone. Not anymore. There were no easy answers. The game had left its mark on her in ways she didn't fully understand yet, and maybe, in the future, the pieces would fall into place in ways she couldn't predict. But she could face it now, whatever came next. As the sun rose higher in the sky, casting its light over the mansion and its secrets, Emily took a final look around the room. She could almost hear the echoes of the past, the whispers of the lies that had bound her to this place, but she wasn't bound anymore. She was free. And the story didn't end here, not for her, and not for anyone who had been part of it. The truth had been revealed, but some mysteries were left unanswered. Some questions would never have answers. And that, in a strange way, was the only truth Emily needed to know. With Sam by her side, Emily stepped into the world beyond, her future uncertain but full of possibilities. The power she had once thought was out of her reach was now in her hands, and though she didn't know what she would do with it, she knew one thing for sure: she was ready for whatever came next. And no matter how deep the shadows of her past were, she had learned one final lesson: she was the one who would decide the light that would follow. The door closed behind them, leaving the mansion to its secrets. And as they walked away, the lingering question wasn't what had happened, but what would happen next.